but cautiously so, one shoulder turned just a little away, as though with a view to quick retreat. Had it reached that point, Hawk wondered, when his own people had to go in fear of him because his temper had become so uncertain? He suppressed a sigh, hoping it was not true, for such weakness would afflict his pride as much as his stubborn sense of fairness. "What is it, Edvard?" he asked, making an effort at cordiality. Already the brief escape offered by the hunt was fading, returning him to the workaday world of decisions, judgments, compromises, and wise leadership he was expected to provide by the several thousand people who clustered in and around the fortress of Hawkfort, and the thousands more spread out over his lands. He never questioned his duty. In fact, he embraced it, but there were times when it weighed heavy all the same. Such a mellow day might have been spent in more amiable pursuits, perhaps dangling a line beside a brook in the hope that no fish would come along to require attention. He thought, too, that it would be pleasant to share such an interlude with someone who would ask nothing of him save his company. But that notion had scarcely stirred before the realities of his duty, which was to say his life, overrode it. The steward, reassured that his lord was more approachable than of late, relaxed as much as his meticulous nature ever permitted. He was young for his position, which he had on merit rather than rank, and he meant to hold on to it. "3 servants of the Lady Krysta have arrived, my lord." He gestured toward a trio standing some little distance away near the smithy shed, one of many such small buildings that framed the inner walls of the fortress. The slight motion of his hand, the faint pinching of his nostrils, and the shadowed look in his eyes expressed a range of emotion scarcely seen in the redoubtable Edvard. Surprise, concern, puzzlement, a veritable cacophony of feeling flowed from one who was normally the most imperturbable of men. Hawk surveyed the little group for himself. There was a man, short and stocky, bent-shouldered, with long black hair and beard, and coal-bright eyes. Beside him stood an aged woman, dressed all in black, hair like a raven's wing, sharp-nosed. Partly concealed by them both, but still visible, was a much younger woman, also black-haired, delicately made, with pixie-ish features and eyes, dancing, anticipation-filled eyes, that even from a distance appeared to him to be the self-same shade as a forest glen in high summer. He could almost feel the cool moss, hear the crystalline patter of water on stone, smell the fragrance of shy wood violets twined in the hair of a woman with skin like cream and— Hawk returned to himself with a start. He was too far from the girl to see such detail, yet had been so absorbed in his imaginings that he had forgotten all else. That was absurd. She was only a servant, a rather small and dishevelled one at that. There was no conceivable reason why she should be of any particular interest to him. Yet there he was again, falling into those eyes and that sweetly entrancing smile that managed to remind him somehow of what exactly? He'd seen it there in his mind for just an instant, but it was gone too swiftly, leaving only a fleeting impression of sun-dappled water and the sleek, gleaming forms that leaped between air and sea in the wake of his fast-skimming boat. Ridiculous. He looked away, looked back, caught himself doing so, and scowled. She saw his confusion and seemed to fold herself up, all but vanishing behind her 2 companions. He was tired, that was it. He'd been at court until a fortnight ago, and that was always wearying. Since returning home, the business of Hawkfort had occupied him without surcease. And then there was the matter of his damnable marriage hanging over him like the proverbial sword. One no less sharp than the tongue of his half-sister, who he saw too late was bearing down on him with all the grace and subtlety of an ill-tempered she-goat. Hawk spared a thought for the rapacious Danes, whom he would have greatly preferred to face, and steeled himself for her usual tirade. "This is beyond all bounds," Daria proclaimed. It is not enough that we are left to wonder when the Lady Krysta might find it convenient to appear. Now we are expected to welcome her servants in her stead." She cast a dire look over her shoulder before returning her attention full force to her brother, who closed his eyes for a moment, summoning the most elusive of all virtues, patience. Daria was his elder by a decade. By all rights, she should have been in her own manner, and so she would have been, had not her husband had the poor judgment to go against Alfred of Wessex, just as the scholar warrior was setting out to unite Britons against the Danes. Promptly widowed, Daria made no secret of her resentment against all those who had denied her what she thought of as her proper place, including the brother who had given her a home. Yet she managed Hawk's household well enough, and generally had the sense to keep her endless complaints from his ears. Not today, though. Today she so brimmed over with afflictions as to banish caution. "What could she be thinking of to send these three with no warning?" she demanded, standing with her hands on her thin hips, glaring at him. "Did she consider the inconvenience to us? And why are they here? Does she think to find Hawkfort wanting? Does she imagine it poorer than what she has known in the barbaric Northlands?" With each question, Daria's shrill voice rose a notch, until at the end she was fairly shouting. Hawk was a forbearing man, but there were limits to what he would permit. His authority and the simple prudence of any male demanded he put a stop to such distemper. "Curb your tongue, Daria. It pleases me not. See to quarters for them, and be swift about it." His sister sputtered in anger, but the icy coldness of his gaze and the hard set of his features reminded her belatedly of the steely will he never hesitated to wield. She was still glaring at Hawk when he gestured to the short, stocky man. As he approached, Hawk surveyed him more closely. The fellow was troll-like, thick through the shoulders, slightly stooped, with bandy legs as though he lurked under bridges, waiting to surprise the unwary traveller. His bright stare beneath furry brows suggested he wasn't averse to such mischief. "I be Thorgold, lord," he said, "servant to the Lady Krysta." "Do I take it your arrival means the lady will grace us soon with her presence?" The biting edge to Hawk's words would have prompted most men to take a step back. Thorgold merely shrugged his broad shoulders and spread his gnarled hands. "She comes when she comes, lord." And that, it seemed, was that. Short of airing his irritation to the odd little man, Hawk had scant choice but to let it pass. He turned the trio over to Daria and returned his attention to Edvard, but not without a final glance at the girl. She was trailing after the other two as they proceeded across the bailey. Startled to be discovered watching him over her shoulder, she stumbled, caught herself, and flashed a look of pure chagrin that for some reason amused him mightily. Several moments passed before he realized that Edvard's surprised expression came from the unaccustomed sound of his master chuckling. That self-same sound warmed Krysta all the way through, sending little tingles down her back as she followed Thorgold and Raven and the dour-faced woman toward the servants' hall. She didn't dare another look over her shoulder, but that was not for lack of temptation. Her common sense, in which she took great pride, managed to assert itself just barely enough to stop her. He was so big, easily the biggest man she had ever seen, save for the brief glimpse she'd had a few months before of the mighty Jarl of Skirringsheel, Wolf Hackinson, when he came to speak with her half-brother. Then was she summoned for a rare visit to her family's manor, never imagining why, until she was told weeks later that she was to be given in marriage to the wolf's own brother-in-law, the feared Saxon lord called Hawk. He had the eyes of a bird of prey, she thought, yet when he laughed, a smile curved her full mouth, set beneath a slightly upturned nose. When he laughed, Lord Hawk almost made her believe that her precautions were not even necessary. Being a woman of prudence, she set aside that notion.